Picture this. Millions of dollars of cutting-edge, heavily armored military hardware entirely neutralized. And it wasn't taken out by some superior high-tech weapon, but by a dirt road. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating, deeply complex historical event, the disastrous operational realities of the March 1975 withdrawal in Vietnam's Central Highlands. You know, this isn't just a story of a military maneuver gone wrong. It's an absolute masterclass in how logistical bottlenecks and raw geography can completely rewrite the rules of an engagement. We're going to look at the very anatomy of a trap, dissecting the exact moments and environmental factors that turned a planned retreat into an utter catastrophe.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about the tactical profile we're dealing with. A heavily armed, technologically superior force that just ends up completely paralyzed. How exactly does that happen? Well, today, we're going to see how the geographic environment itself became the ultimate antagonist. It wasn't just the opposing forces they had to worry about. It was the very ground beneath their treads that stripped a modern armored column of its absolute greatest asset, which is, of course, its mobility. To really understand this physical trap, we first have to look at the massive command vacuum that set the whole thing in motion. On March 14, 1975, President Nguyen Van Thieu made this unilateral, honestly panicked decision to withdraw I Corps forces from Pleiku and Kon Tum. Because he was terrified of leaks and widespread civilian panic, he made it a highly secretive verbal order given exclusively to Major General Pham Van Phu. The Joint General Staff down in Saigon almost entirely bypassed. Literally overnight, traditional communication channels and coordinated planning protocols just evaporated. And as if that wasn't chaotic enough, PAVN forces then cut Route 19, which was supposed to be the primary artery out. This forced the entire massive withdrawal onto a desperate alternate path, Route 7B. Listen, you simply cannot bypass traditional planning like that without triggering catastrophic, cascading effects down the line. Because this order was kept so incredibly quiet, the Air Force and regional sector commanders were left completely in the dark during those most critical first hours. I mean, imagine trying to coordinate a massive withdrawal of heavy armor and personnel, but the very people supposed to provide your air cover don't even know you're moving. Orders down the chain of command became fragmented, totally contradictory, or they just didn't exist at all. This immediate structural communication breakdown is what instantly turned a planned tactical withdrawal into a chaotic rout. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer brutal reality of this operational environment. It cannot be overstated. Route 7B was not a highway. It was basically a ghost road, an old, long-abandoned, completely unpaved logging trail. Think about the terrain profile we're throwing an army into. You've got a heavy jungle canopy completely blocking aerial visibility, degraded dirt tracks that are basically impassable for heavy machinery, and this extremely steep, unforgiving terrain. And perhaps most devastatingly, the bridges were either destroyed or heavily decayed, most notably the absolutely crucial bridge over the Ba River. These specific terrain obstacles completely neutralized the tactical mobility of the ARVN forces. The environment itself was a hostile, suffocating force.
So the crucial point is the compounding effect of that geography. It was absolute chaos. Because of that steep terrain and those narrow, degraded dirt tracks, you suddenly had thousands of mechanized vehicles, supply trucks, and over 100,000 civilian refugees forced into a single-file, agonizingly slow column. It became a claustrophobic nightmare. These heavy mechanized units, which were specifically designed for sweeping maneuverability and overwhelming power, were entirely trapped by the dense jungle canopy and the unforgiving topography.
Just one single lane. That is the stark, terrifying reality of this degraded dirt track. By forcing an entire modern army and an immense civilian population down a single-lane logging trail, the environment effectively eliminated any chance for flanking, maneuvering, or counterattacking. When you're restricted to a single-file line, your massive numerical and technological advantages disappear in an instant. You are literally only as fast and only as strong as the vehicle immediately in front of you. And this brings us to a really fascinating technical mismatch. The ARVN and VNAF assets were incredibly reliant on infrastructure. We're talking heavy M113 armor, road-reliant transport, and close air support planes that absolutely required clear visibility to operate safely. On the flip side, the PAVN interception forces from the B3 front, specifically the 320th Division, had a drastically light footprint. They were high-mobility infantry, armed to the teeth with portable anti-tank weapons like the RPG-7, and they could rapidly deploy anti-aircraft artillery. The PAVN forces were perfectly, almost surgically, suited to exploit the specific terrain, while the ARVN forces were heavily penalized by it. Let's move ahead and see how this builds, because it was only a matter of time until this powder keg ignited.
As this massive, completely disorganized convoy clogged up the trail, the highly mobile PAVN 320th Division spotted the incredible vulnerability of a single-file column and moved to cut it. And remember that command breakdown we talked about earlier? Because of that, there was a total lack of ARVN flank security and reconnaissance. So the column gets struck ruthlessly in the flanks and rear, which immediately divides the force into isolated pockets. And because they're stuck on that single lane, vehicle breakdowns and destroyed lead transports instantly block the road. The retreat literally became a static shooting gallery. And this brilliantly illustrates the human cost of these operational failures. Just look at the friction from 3 different perspectives on the ground. Picture the convoy commander. Their objective is to move heavy vehicles to the coast, but they hit an absolute wall. They have no engineering assets to bridge the Bay River, there's complete civilian panic blocking movement, and their heavy armor is sitting there completely immobile. Then you've got the VNAF pilot, trying to provide air cover, but they're blinded by severe smoke from burning vehicles, they lack forward air controllers on the ground, and there's a massive risk of friendly fire. Finally, think about the Ranger rearguard, desperately trying to buy time, but suffering from low ammo, absolutely no radio contact with headquarters, and facing overwhelming infantry assaults. 3 totally different roles, all completely paralyzed by the exact same broken command and hostile environment.
So, what does this all mean operationally? Well, the final impacts are staggering. The Route 7B choke points resulted in a complete loss of vehicle maneuverability, forcing a dynamic, mechanized army into a highly vulnerable, static defense posture. Air-to-ground coordination was severely degraded because without functioning tactical operations centers back in Pleiku, airstrikes were just uncoordinated and incredibly dangerous. And then there's the final defining metric, logistical attrition. We see the massive abandonment of entirely functional U.S.-supplied hardware, M48 tanks, 155mm howitzers, heavy supply trucks, all left behind simply because of fuel starvation and completely blocked pathways.
If you take away just one thing from this explainer, let it be this. The sheer scale of abandoned hardware wasn't because the technology failed or because they lacked firepower. Not at all. It was dictated entirely by a total loss of maneuverability. The steep terrain, the decayed bridges, the narrow logging trail. These geographic factors created a logistical bottleneck so severe that keeping the technology became physically impossible. Geography, quite literally, defeated the machine. Which leaves us with this final, vital question to think about. What is the ultimate cost when a mechanized army ignores the lethal realities of its operational environment? The disaster on Route 7B shows us, for sure, that power and technology mean absolutely nothing if the ground beneath you won't let you move. It's a stark, powerful reminder of how friction, environment, and communication are the true pillars of operational success. I really hope you found this analysis as fascinating as I did. Keep questioning the details and definitely check out our other explainers to keep exploring the incredible dynamics of history and strategy.